Brooklyn.
So, good morning. You're on the Get Busy Livin podcast. We had a wonderful guest this morning, and I'm Dr. Scott from Sixth Sense Acupuncture and the Healthy Habits Club. And we have a wonderful guest this morning, Jeffrey Kothe, and he's going to speak to us about a number of things, and he's also going to give some gold nuggets, I hope. But it doesn't matter if you don't. I'm sure it's going to be a funny interview anyway, a podcast, this one. So strap yourselves in, guys, because, thank you so much, Jeff, for coming and sharing your information and your life with us, basically, as well.
I appreciate the opportunity. This is fantastic. I have a mission to get the information I have about peripheral neuropathy out to the world. There's too many people that suffer needlessly, and the word needlessly surprises a lot of people. So that's my mission, is to help people at least understand it. And as we talk here, you'll understand why I have such a passion for it.
Yeah, brother, I'm in the same boat. I'm the unusual cousin that comes to the birthday party and says, "Oh, you should try Chinese medicine." They look at me like, weirdo, weird cousin. So I know how you feel, Jeff. I know exactly how you feel. You're the weird cousin too, so I get it. So I'll start with the first question. So Jeffrey, tell us what gets you out of bed every morning, mate.
Well, my comedy background tells me I should say something cool like the sunlight through my window, but I'm almost always up before the sun comes up, so that doesn't work. I was never blessed with a switch to shut off my brain. And it's very rude in the morning. It wakes me up, and that's what wakes me up. But what gets me out of bed, what makes me drive, is I'm on a mission. I, not all that long ago, was told that I need to figure out what my passion is, but more importantly, what my passions are. Because some people will tell you, oh, follow your passion and the money will come. And I understand that saying. The issue with me is sometimes you got to have more than one passion mixed together before it will actually be something that you can do and put food on the table. Mine is a combination of three things. I like public speaking. I know that throws a lot of people off. I didn't used to like it, used to hate it. But I got to the point where not only did I get better at it, but I found out secrets that'll help people get better at public speaking themselves. The second one, my second part of it, is I like humor, the stand-up comedy and so forth. I was dared to get into that. But the third passion that I have is the peripheral neuropathy. So I thought, you know what, if I could get up in front of a group of people who are suffering from peripheral neuropathy, make them laugh, forget about the pain and troubles that they've got for a while, but educate them on a treatment that actually works to get rid of it, not to help it, not to cure it either, though, but to get rid of the problem. I think that would be something I'd be pretty passionate about. So that's where I'm at as far as what gets me out of bed, what motivates me, and I'm just trying to get the word out. That's the truth.
That's cool. I'm the same boat, Jeff. I just want to help the community, just like yourself, and like you say, people don't have to needlessly put up with health complaints, and specifically peripheral neuropathy. And so, I get what you're saying, brother. And that's commendable. I appreciate your service to the community. Thank you so much. So
Pharma doesn't have the answers for everything, huh? By the way, I speak fluent sarcasm as well. So,
yes, I noticed that.
I try to point it out with silly things like rubbing my chin. I never do that when I talk anyway, but I do speak fluent sarcasm.
I remember that when we played poker. So what was I going to say? So I'll move into the second question. So tell us, how did you get it? Well, how did you get into comedy? That was your first passion.
I'm glad you said it that way. You told me what questions that I could expect to be asked. And it's interesting because the last one's the one I want to talk about first, how I got into comedy. I have been studying comedians since I can't say since I was little, because I've never been little. I was young once. I'm a big guy. And I've been studying it for a long, long time. The first ones I really remember studying with George Carlin and some of the guys that the bigger names and so forth that you'd still remember. the Richard Pryors and so forth. But my thing in comedy was I was memorizing their information. I remember distinctly. It's going to sound so weird. The old guy's telling his memories from when he was a kid. Um, we had an assignment in humanities class, if you've ever heard of anything like that, and it was to draw a picture of what you would be doing in your dream job. And I drew a stage and curtains and a microphone and a much thinner guy than I am standing behind the microphone. And I caught so much crap for, oh, you're going to be funny, huh? Tell a joke. And I took a lot of heat for that, but I stood by it. And there was one guy in particular, the bully of the school. And I don't have to worry, I could say his name, but I'm sure he's been killed in prison by now. Anyway, quite sure. Not that I did it or anything. Anyway, he just couldn't believe that I had any idea about being funny, and he just made fun of me, ridiculed me. That made me even stronger in my commitment to do stand-up comedy. Well, you tell me a comedian or tell me a part of his bit, and I could probably tell you who the comedian was. My point being this: my wife at the time, ex-wife, said, hey, the junior college has a class called The Art of Humor, and they're teaching people how to do stand-up comedy. And I thought, man, that sounds great. That's exactly what I need, that kick in the pants to move me forward toward doing stand-up. And I went to the class, and it was being taught by a part-time minister. I thought, okay, so the blue language is pretty much out, right? And there were about, I think it was 26 people were in that class to begin with. And he explained what we were going to talk about and building a joke. We actually had a textbook, believe it or not. Judy Carter had a book about comedy and how to build comedy. And then one of the last things he said was, the final exam for this class will be to do 5 to 7 minutes at the local comedy club. And I remember that distinctly because the 26 people that showed up the first time, we had about 12 the second time. Apparently, they didn't like the idea of actually doing the comedy. They just wanted to learn how. So there was only about 12 of us. And it was a good class. It taught me a lot of things. The book is fantastic. I've actually talked to Judy about the book. It's great. But the other part of it was at the end, he said, well, we're going to get our setup. We were actually going to do the middle. They were going to have an opener, an MC. They were going to have us, and then they were going to have the headliner. And he says, all right, so we're going to decide the show. Who wants to go first? And my hand shot up. And the guy next to me goes, why on earth would you want to go first? I said, because if you guys all suck, I don't want to follow you. It turns out it was one of the best comedy decisions I've ever made in my life because they were bad. I wasn't great, but they were bad. I remember this one blonde lady went up there in a white dress and sang "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" and walked off the stage. She was trying to be Marilyn. That was her act. I'm going, and she didn't sound anything like her, didn't look anything like her. I'm going, anyway. So I got off stage and I did it right. I got all my friends to show up early. So the front table was nothing but my friends and family. And so I got pretty good applause and people were like, oh, okay, then he must be good. It must be funny. I got off stage and one of my buddies says, hey, that's pretty good. Let me buy you a beer. So I walk up there up toward the bar and this lady stopped me and she says, how long you been doing comedy? I said, oh, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes. She says, you'll do all right. And I found out later she was the headliner. And I go, I just did the headliner tell me that I'm going to do all right at this. I guess I got a shot at this. And so I got the bug. Started doing open mics, and I got to the point where I either had to move to LA, Chicago, or Los Angeles. And my hometown was 1,100 people. So that would have been a big move for me. And I decided I didn't want to do it. And the guy I used to do the open mics with, I've seen him on TV many times, and I'm not going to name drop. But Kevin Bozeman, you're all right. I'm proud of you where you took it, and where I'm a little bit envious. Anyway, so that was the comedy part. You can't be a professional speaker until you've been on stage doing comedy. And I've produced my own shows and so forth. So the speaking part of it was fun. I like to teach people about professional speaking and public speaking in general, simply because I've taken a few classes. But the other part of it was when I first went, the first time I went on stage for comedy, I was scared to death and thought I was going to vomit before or while I got on stage. And after I got my first laugh, I was fine. I said, oh man, I hope it doesn't stay this way. It stayed that way for probably a year. It was probably almost a year that I was scared to death to go up there, but I got to push through. And I got the first laugh and settled in, and all right, we're going to be good. I was so scared of bombing because every professional comedian I've ever seen on TV says, oh yeah, you're going to bomb. They always talk about their bomb stories because they're hilarious. I've never bombed. I don't know that's because I just prepare so much or I'm not doing enough shows. Maybe I'm not doing them in New York, LA, or Chicago. Anyway. That's
feedback, you reckon?
Part of it. So I like teaching about public speaking. There's a lot of people that don't understand that they can take the nervousness and use it to their advantage. Be prepared. Don't memorize, use bullet points, those kind of things. I like to help people with that. And then the other part of it was the author part of it, how I became an author. Basically, I was talking to somebody who was coaching me on this idea. Well, you're passionate about speaking, and you're passionate about comedy, and you're passionate about doing talking about peripheral neuropathy. Have you written a book? I went, no. Do I need to? I said, well, it'd be kind of nice to have a book. If they can't see you live, it'd be nice if they had something that they could learn from you. And so I put together a book. It's in editing now. Peripheral neuropathy, the truth about becoming symptom-free. And I wanted to do that because, I don't know, would you like to get a word in edgewise, Dr. Scott, or would you like me to keep going? You can tell I'm a little passionate about this, but.
Yeah, well, no, that's awesome. This is about you, brother. This is about your business. And yeah, so say the name of the book again.
Peripheral Neuropathy, the truth about becoming symptom-free.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Well,
how long did it take you?
To write the book? Yeah. I suppose technically I'm not done if it's still in editing, but I don't know, a couple of months to try. I first started out with, I'm just going to tell my story and say that Big Pharma's got their thumb on everybody that's trying to treat. I'm sure it's not too far from the different in Australia or anywhere around that direction than it is in the United States. The government would much rather make more money off of you being ill and taking pills than if you're dead or healthy. And it makes me crazy for several reasons. My mother passed away from cancer, and the chemo, the hair falling out. She was miserable, couldn't hardly breathe, and blah, blah, blah. My father passed away from Parkinson's, and when he passed away, he was taking 17 pills a day. 2 of them for Parkinson's. The other 15 were to counteract the side effects of either the other 2 or each other. I'm going, wait a minute, they're giving you pills that you're gonna need pills for? I don't care how good you think you are, taking 17 pills a day is not healthy. I don't care what it is. I suppose unless it's vitamin B12, B, anyway. So
there's a question. I have a question for the audience. If just ask your doctor if they'd take that many tablets every day.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it'd back them up, wouldn't it? You know what? I had a situation that scared the dickens out of me. There's my old age coming out. I caught the same bug everybody else was catching. You know how that goes, and it's going around, that statement. And I went to the doctor to get the antibiotic, and I sat there and waited for, I don't remember how long. It was pretty long though. And the doctor taps on the door with the clipboard. So I'm guessing he's reading it and tapping it. And he walked in, and I was sitting off to the left. He turned off to the right where his little table was, sat his clipboard down. So what's going on with you then? I said, well, I've got this, and this, and described it. And it was, I knew it was the same thing everybody had. The part that made me angry was, without looking at me, he wrote the prescription, blindly handed it to me, and said, here, take this. You should be better in a few days. He couldn't pick me out of a lineup of 5 women because he has no idea what I'm like he never looked my direction. I looked at it. I was watching his head the whole time he went in there. And I went, this son of a gun has never even looked at me. And he wrote me a prescription. And if that's what our medical system has come to, that it angered me just a little bit, maybe, Dr. Scott. That's.
Oh, I totally agree, brother. I totally agree. This is a story that I'm hearing a lot, and this is what I'm trying. I'm the same thing, mate. I'm trying to educate the public, trying to educate the community that it's like the analogy. I like using this analogy in Australia. We have they call them Aboriginals, but really I call them the originals.
Okay.
So they have they call it, they're like a witch doctor. They call them Kothe man, or another name is Featherfoot because he wears feathers on his feet. Anyway, they say when they point the bone at you. So in the original culture, the Kothe man points the bone at you, then that's it. You're dead. You're going to die.
Seems
See what I'm saying?
harsh.
Well, we're going to die anyway. Just he's speeding it up.
Okay.
So psychologically, they believe that they're going to die. So it's no different. Yeah, you go into the GP and then go to the specialist, and then they say, "We've got this. You're going to die." Is it any different?
Well, I tell you what, and it not to one up, but it gets even stronger because of the number of times that it happened to me. Let me kind of give an example of why I wrote the book, okay? And I think people will understand why I have the passion that I do. My godmother was type 2 diabetic for as long as I've known her, and she had a terrible time with her feet. Most of the time, she couldn't feel them. I can't believe she still had them attached to her when she passed away. But she'd fallen several times, and because she was diabetic, her eyesight was not very good. So everything she owned was right around her lazy boy recliner, right? So when she got up and fell, it's like, oh my God, what'd she hit her head on this time? We just knew it was going to be bad. Well, I started doing research on the neuropathy part of what she had then, but she every time she fell, I'd have to ask her, were you using your walker? You weren't, were you? And she wasn't. And so I know how you get a little set in your ways and that kind of thing. So I put a little Catholic guilt on her a couple times. Anyway, so the thing that really hit home with me, couple of things. One is her falling, but two, she cried herself to sleep most nights because her restless leg was so bad. And when she did sleep, maybe an hour and a half. And so she was constantly wanting to go to bed because she was so tired and couldn't go to sleep. It was terrible. It was torture. Well, then I got neuropathy. I was not diabetic, still not, knock on wood, right? Still not diabetic. And I got neuropathy from a fall. A weird story how it happened. I'll spare you of that one. But what happened was I fell on my right hip on cement, and the neuropathy started in my left leg. And it started with my feet, but very soon went to a burning sensation about as big as you could about as big as your hand, so to speak, above my knee on my left leg. I couldn't stand or walk very far for more than about 7 or 8 minutes, and I had to sit. I could not put any more weight on it. It was just like somebody was taking a knife and just scraping in there.
Stabbing.
It hurt. I've got a pretty high tolerance for pain, I think. I mean, anybody who's been to the dentist and said, forget the shot and the gas, just drill it.
That's what I do.
Maniac. Yeah, okay. So you understand it. Okay. You're the only one that I've ever met that went, yeah, I get that too. Anyway, so I went to a neurologist, found out he was a pretty famous one. He'd studied in Italy, Holland, several other places. And what I have found since is that most neurologists are more concerned with your brain and your spine than they are with your fingers and your toes. They're more concerned with the big diseases, not the fingers and the toes, because it doesn't pay them very well or something. I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to crap all over doctors, but I'm gonna. Anyway, so, but I'm gonna. I don't mean it. It comes out naturally. And when I went to this doctor, he asked me some questions, did a few tests, and said, yeah, there's neuropathy here. He said, follow me. And I followed him back in the office. He sat me down in a lazy boy recliner. There were two of them sitting there, so he's growing his business. Anyway, he took what I would only describe as a loaf of bread bag and put it over my foot. Now, it was summer and I had sandals on, so it didn't take but a second to take off my shoe. He put it over my bare foot. He put on these pads that look like they were just red lights. And I looked at him, well, some of your lights aren't working. He goes, no, they're working. Okay, if you say so. I could see half of them were red and half of them were not lit, and found out later they were infrared. Anyway, puts that on my left leg, only my left side, sprays some B12 and D3 into my mouth, vitamin sprays, gives me it's called Neo 40. It's a brand of a nitric oxide booster. Nitric oxide is it's a component within the blood vessel walls that helps release oxygen into your blood vessels.
Yep.
He gave me that and said, this will take a little bit. Give me 20 minutes and I'll be back. So I'm sitting there just reading the posters on the wall and going, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. He came back, and this is the part that made me an absolute believer. He came back, he took the pad off, and then he very carefully took the bag off my foot. I'm going, why is he being so careful? It's a bread bag, right? I mean, what's he doing? I looked in the bottom of that bag, and there was about a quarter cup. I don't know how many milliliters that is.
About 50 mil. About 50.
Okay, but yeah, 50, 60 mils, somewhere in there, of dirty water in the bottom of that bag. It was dry when it went on. And I looked at that and I said, where did that come from? I said, out of your feet. Just like, this is everyday stuff. Out of your feet. So what is it? He said, that's the toxins coming out of your feet. That's what's going to get you better with your neuropathy. I drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. I went, oh, in 20 minutes, he proved to me that this goofy light pad thing worked. And all he did was give me vitamins and a nitric oxide booster. Everything was natural. I said, this is all natural. Is this heat? It didn't heat up. I go, what is this doing? He explained to me every part of neuropathy so that I could understand it. And I'm a math and science major in college, and I got to know how the watch works instead of just telling you what time it is, right? And he was explaining, if you can see me on the pictures behind me, that this is a normal nerve, and the yellow line in the middle here, if I can point to it right, that would be like an electric wire in the plastic coating. The myelin sheath is what's protecting that nerve, and then the blood vessels all around. When you get neuropathy, the blood vessels start to recede because there's inflammation and so forth. It starts to recede. Then you get the deterioration of this myelin sheath, and you can see it's already started to deteriorate with very little receding of the blood vessels. By the time you get down here, the blood vessels are out of the picture, and this exposed nerve is much like an exposed live wire with the plastic torn off of it. That's where you get the sparks and you get the tingling, the burning, the itching, the numbing, etc. of that. And what has to be done? What has to be done? I can't stress this enough. You have to get back to this state, or you're going to experience that all the time. You have to reverse that process, or your neuropathy will bother you for the rest of your life. The thing that really got me when I started working for this neurologist, okay, the thing that really got me was most people, they've never seen this. No. Most people don't get told anything about how neuropathy works, why it does this. They don't even get told that it's progressive and it will kill you.
Yeah, eventually,
okay? I'm not trying to be dramatic. It will knock, on average, 10.4 years off of your life.
Yeah. Yep.
Remember when you said you were happy this is going to be a lighthearted interview? It'll knock 10.4 years off your life, but not before it amputates your toes, your feet, your legs, and you get to ride in a wheelchair for a while. Yippee, right? And people don't get told it's progressive. So here's the thing. When somebody goes to the doctor and says, hey, my feet hurt, can you help me? Their answer is, yeah, if I make you so you don't feel your feet hurting, you're all right. So they write you a prescription for gabapentin or Lyrica or pregabalin or duloxetine or there's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them was made for neuropathy. Most of them, almost all of them fall into one of two categories. They were either made to stop epileptic seizures,
Yep.
which means they stop the communication from your feet to your brain. Does that sound healthy at all?
Oh, this is fantastic. So yeah, basically it turns you into a zombie.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And the thing is, the other one is the antidepressants. Because if your neuropathy gets bad enough that you can't sleep, you might think about the business end of a gun, right? And so that you need the antidepressants to keep from offing yourself because the pain is so bad. Now, does any of that sound like it's going to help your neuropathy or just help you cope with it? And that's
that's the whole that's what conventional medicine is all about. It's all about how do we dull down the symptom.
Yep.
Doesn't get
and
rid of it.
Last as long as possible with it, so you're still taking. So let me get into the real, what I call the exciting part of this story. I started working for this neurologist, and I was literally going from restaurant to restaurant all across the country, Florida to California, North Dakota to Texas, and everywhere in between. We put an ad in the paper, said, if you're suffering from neuropathy, you need to know this information. Yeah, we had to buy their dinner, but about, I would say 95% of them came in with a bad attitude. Oh, this is going to be garbage, or just total naysayers.
Yeah.
And about 80% of them bought the treatment because, well, for several reasons. I explained to them things they'd never heard before. They had in front of them somebody who was symptom-free, and they just go, what do we have to lose? Nobody told them it was progressive and going to kill them. And that alone made me angry. So I went all around the country. And the thing is, how many people, I couldn't, because of HIPAA, the health insurance, the health information practices, I couldn't ask them, hey, raise your hand if you're taking gabapentin or pregabalin or any, I couldn't do that. But I said, if you're taking gabapentin, I want you to think about this. Has your dosage gone up? And every one of them shaking their head. You know, you can't get people that are in that shape to not give their information. Every one of them shaking their head. Well, if the dosage went up, doesn't that mean that the disease is getting worse? And if the disease is getting worse, why are you taking that drug for it? And do you have other issues? Like you said, turning into a zombie? Is that a problem? Are you getting brain fog and all that kind of? Yeah, I'm getting it. Do you think that might be the problem? Is you're taking a drug that wasn't meant for it at all? Oh, they've never been told that. Everybody wants to trust their doctor. Everybody wants to trust their neurologist. Here's the difference. Doc, my feet hurt, and then you get a gabapentin. Doc, my feet hurt due to my neuropathy. Can you stop the progression so my feet will stop hurting? That's an entirely different question. But you don't know to ask that question. That's the part that made me angry, that most of the people were increasing their dosage. It's going to get worse. It's progressive. It's running in the background. You've masked it so you don't realize how bad it is. And that's when you start to get what I call fighting mad with the big pharma.
And that you're exactly right. There's so many things you've said that I have been trying to tell the community for a long, long time.
Living, breathing proof, folks.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Yes, totally. I have my own story. I get it. It's not about peripheral neuropathy, but I understand what you're saying. Everyone seems to think that, yeah, the doctor's going to have all the answers. And like you said, the way you've just put that is that the information isn't always dispensed. And if it does get dispensed, I don't think that the patient understands what they're trying to say to them. I think that could be another
maybe
issue.
Not understand, but maybe not even listening. Like I said, the doctor never even looked at me and handed me a prescription for something. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't wrong. It wasn't the prescription that wasn't going to do me any good. It was what I needed, but that wasn't the point. I didn't see a doctor. I saw a doctor, but the doctor didn't see me. How does that supposed to work? Wait a minute.
Well, like you said, he could do it in his sleep. Basically, he's an automatic pilot. This is I know that. I know that condition here. This is what we give everyone. It's a blanket. It's a blanket. What do you call it? Response.
Yeah. Yeah, blanket response too. That's the other part. Um, it's,
Yeah,
if
very
you're
true.
not going to care, hey, when I went to university, my roommate was pre-med, and that scared the hell out of me. I wouldn't trust him to take my temperature. By
You
the way,
might get the thermometer in the wrong place, you reckon?
well, I no, don't get me started on that one. Do, that's why they call it practicing medicine, right?
Correct. Yes, that's
My,
right.
my other my other one joke that I've been using since I was very very young. So, do you know what they call the doctor that graduates last in his class in medical school? Doctor, unfortunately. Doesn't matter what grade you got, if they still got a diploma, they can practice. So um,
Yeah,
the
yeah. So
the
this is
number of
the
people, I'll tell you what, I got a story that made this all worthwhile. I did a seminar at a restaurant in the middle of the country in Sioux City, Iowa, of all places. Fantastic restaurant. I wish I could remember the name of it. I'd plug them anyway. Uh, I had a lady came in. I was doing the registrations at the back of the room. This lady came in and she was struggling with her walker. She was having a hard time with it. In
yeah.
fact, I got up and helped her to get to a seat that was really close to the back of the room and bought her dinner and so forth. She ended up making an appointment with me. I went to her home. I got her set up with the treatment. And fast forward 3 months, I'm at the same restaurant in the same city because we were doing, loops and that kind of thing. And I was finishing up the person who just registered, putting that away. And this lady says, "Oh, Jeff, I'm so glad you're here." She said, "Would you buy my dinner if I came in and told people?" And I look up and it was her. No walker, no cane, no support of any kind to walk, big smile on her face. She said, "This has been amazing. I could barely get around, and now I get around without anything at all. I'm walking fine. In fact, I go for walks, and that's something I couldn't even have dreamed of. Would you be okay buying my dinner if I tell people in your room here about my story?" I said, "Are you kidding me? I want you to tour with me and go to every place I go to and let them know it's not just me. Look at this person had the same thing." She didn't even look like the same person because most of what I saw was the top of her head because she was hunched over her walker.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
time she
yeah.
was standing straight up in front of me. I get goosebumps just thinking about that lady. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's the reason I do this. I changed her
Amazing.
life.
Amazing.
Love
Yeah,
it. I love it.
yeah, yeah. So and that's why I was happy to invite you on, because if we could educate the neurologists a little bit more as well, and the GPs, well, we call them general practitioners, you call them MDs.
Oh,
Um,
and I call them general practitioners too. Well, here's two things on that very same note. One, I will gladly get my book when it's done being edited. I don't know when that is. I wish I did. I call on a regular basis. Anyway, when I get that done, I'll be glad to give that to anybody who asks for it. I am going to ask for your information because if you ask me questions, we're going to go back and forth, and I need to keep track of who I'm talking to. That's one. Number two, I had a neurologist who was also a chiropractor, by the way. I had a neurologist treat me. I didn't have to take any drugs. I didn't have to have any surgeries. I didn't have to have any injections. I didn't go through the hell that all of these people that were going to my seminars went through. And I feel so fortunate. In 9 months, I was fine. And that was 7 years ago, and I haven't taken any treatment. Now, I do take nitric oxide boosters simply because it's good for your heart circulation. And I don't know why every cardio doctor in the world doesn't prescribe that to everybody. It does wonders. And if you want to get the men to make sure they take it, tell them it's really good for ED. It's actually true. I'm not going to tell you why I know. Okay. Anybody wants the book, let me know. I will give you my book. I want the information out there. The thing is, if he would have just treated me and I'd have gotten better, I don't know. I don't know what my attitude would have been toward it, but knowing how I got it, knowing why I got it, knowing what happens that I've got it, knowing it's progressive, knowing all the things there is to know about peripheral neuropathy, I thought, man, there's no way somebody takes the time to learn all this from their doctor or has the doctor that knows all this. I want to get this information to doctors as well. Because if you really took that hypocritical oath, never mind, the Hippocratic oath to help people, and you're prescribing gabapentin for neuropathy, shame on you.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
I don't care if every doctor, hospital, clinic, and pharmaceutical company hates me. I've already told my wife, if I'm dying and it comes to a handful of pills and a handful of bullets, she knows which one to give me. I'm not taking the pill.
That's for another episode. I was going to say that's for.
See, I've only been in trouble medically one time. I couldn't breathe, and the doctor picked me up by my ankles and spanked my bare ass, and I've been fine ever since. That was almost 63 years ago. So
well done. Well, you had peripheral neuropathy, and you kicked it to the curb. So that's great. So tell us a little bit more. So have you had any other clients that the elderly lady was a good example? Is there any others that come to mind that you think, oh, that's amazing how it changed their life?
She's the only one that came back and wanted me to buy dinner in exchange for her testimonial. That I will say. And that was interesting. However, no, there are hundreds of people that reported back and said, okay, this is fantastic. I've had people that got better before I left town, and they sent an email in and said, hey, tell Jeff thank you, because here's the thing. You can probably tell when I'm up in front of a crowd explaining all this stuff about neuropathy, I get a little passionate about it. And it's because I want to make sure they understand that they've got somebody who really does care about what's going on with them, with their health, with their dollars that they're spending for the treatments they've done and that kind of thing. It's important.
Yep.
Very important. I've got hundreds of people that are better. I'd love to get testimonials, but what I'd rather do is make sure that everybody knows and has the chance to get better, rather than saying, hey, here's a couple people, I hope you believe me. If you really look at the information, it will make sense, I promise you, because it hit me like a brick over the head.
That's pretty cool. That's great that you've helped so many people with this issue. And have you been? So you've been around. Have you been to any other countries? Have you only toured the States, or?
I've only toured the States, and that was mostly because just the logistics of sending me from one place to another and that type of thing. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in old country buffets. I spent a lot of time in what are they called? Golden Corrals. I spent a lot of the buffet type places. If they had a banquet room off to the side, that I spent a lot of time in there. But the farthest, I was Pompano Beach in Florida to all the way over to the California. And then North Dakota, I was in about as far as in North Dakota as you can get before you hit Canada, and all the way down to Corpus Christi in Texas. And I was in the South Dakota area long enough. They rented me an apartment. If that gives you an idea how long we spent going from town to town. In the more rural areas, it surprised me. They don't have a lot of choice. Your nearest neurologist may be a 4-hour drive away. Well, that's really tough if you've got pain in your legs to sit in a car for 4 hours.
4 hours, yeah.
And especially get one that's going to accept you between 1 o'clock and 2:30 because that's your window. It's like, okay, wait a minute, that's not going to work. So, pardon me, my wife is walking through my background here, okay. And she knows.
Because just explain it to the people that haven't experienced it before. Because the feedback I get is basically that when it gets really bad, that even if they touch something with their feet, it just throbs.
Oh,
it makes it so much more sensitive. Even just to put the sheets on your feet, they say it's just canes. It's just so painful.
The comparison that I hear all the time is, and maybe it's just a mental thing. You ever walk on Legos Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But it's not really the size of the leg. It's pins and needles, and it really does feel like that.
Yeah.
It literally felt like somebody was lighting my leg on fire when I was standing, and when it started to burn, it just started like, oh, I can feel it's coming. And 2 minutes later, I had to sit down. I was done. There was no walking, no standing. I had to get off of it. Otherwise, it felt, if you've ever been I'll call it keto. If you've ever been working a muscle and you work it so hard that the lactose is just destroying it, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And I don't know that wasn't happening to a point, but I stopped pushing it. I wanted to see what it would do, and then I go, that can't be a good idea, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's what happens is eventually, like you said before, the blood flow just becomes so diminished.
Yep.
And then, like you said, it just keeps firing. So they can't sleep because their feet are on fire all night.
Well, not only that, but like restless leg is really tough because you lay down, you get comfortable, and literally a second and a half to 2.5 or 3 seconds later, you got to move your legs because they're feeling like there's something wrong with them. And how do you get to sleep when you got to move your legs every second or two? It just doesn't work very well. And that was the problem that my godmother was having. And I mean, there's all kinds of different symptoms. But the other thing was she got to the point where her feet, she couldn't feel them. They were numb. So if you're looking at my picture here, they were beyond this point. And just to give you an idea, if people are looking here at my backdrop, this nerve, the healthy one here, is about the size of 1/100th of a human hair. We're not talking about big, so it doesn't take much inflammation to influence that. And now we're talking about the ends of your fingers and your toes. And when it gets to this point, where it's deteriorated, now we're talking about it going up your foot, up your leg. And it only takes a little while for those not to get any blood flow, any nourishment, any sugar, any waste being carried away from the blood vessels to where they're numb. And then they're useless, and you can't feel anything that's going on. You get where you're dragging the foot. How many people have you ever seen that they're walking and their foot just won't pick up at the ankle to take the next step? It just drags and they trip on their own toes.
Yep.
And the reason I'm passionate about this is the diabetes. I don't know too many people in the United States that can say, I don't know anybody who's diabetic. They probably know somebody. They might not be paying attention to it, but they probably know somebody. And there's more and more people, it seems, that are having chemotherapy. And those are the number 1 and number 2 causes of neuropathy. Now, I got my neuropathy from something entirely different. I fell. That is a cause, but it's not a very common one. I wasn't diabetic. I was borderline. I'm sure it didn't help. I hate to admit this, especially when it's recorded. I stopped drinking beer and stopped drinking soda. And guess what? I stopped downing the chemicals the government wanted me to drink on purpose, and it got better. So,
So soft drink is we studied that in nutrition at uni. That when I started researching soft drinks, we call them soft drinks here. You call it soda.
Soda, pop. I call them soft drinks too. You got to understand. I had a very good friend of mine that was a foreign exchange student from Australia when I was in high school, so I got to learn a lot about things over there. And she just came back and visited in April. We went up to Sedona and the Grand Canyon here. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I found out that it's a neurological agent. So what it does is it inhibits, like what you're just pointing out there behind you. That's what it does. That's what so that's why we've got an increase in peripheral neuropathy
quickly.
Yeah, your neurological issues, so MND and Parkinson's, and So that's
what I found out interesting as far as the soda and so forth is I've got the Soda Stream. It's a machine that puts carbonated water. It carbonates the water in the glass. And I found out I was more addicted to the carbonated water than I was the chemicals that the soda companies wanted to put into it. And I found out something interesting. I can use that and just drink water, and I'm just fine. I drink a lot of water that way. So that may help somebody if they're borderline diabetic and that kind of thing. You can drink water and the carbon dioxide just, all right. I can make burp jokes now, but I'm not going to. It doesn't do anything bad or real
Doesn't do it injustice. Doesn't do it justice.
right.
All right, brother. Is there anything else you wanted to speak about the method that you use, or about peripheral neuropathy?
The biggest thing is to educate yourself. Probably even more than the treatment that you use, unless you're convinced that your treatment is going to be the drugs. The drugs cannot do anything for your neuropathy except help you deal with it. It will not stop the progression. Reversing the progression is key. So getting information is the key to helping yourself. And that's with almost anything health-wise, if you really think about it.
Correct.
But this one, it just seems like there's so much bad information out there, and you want to trust your doctor. I get it. I wanted to trust mine. I don't have one anymore because of what happened. But anyway, that's another story. I take my dad's approach to medicine. If you don't go to a doctor, they won't diagnose you with anything bad. And then, okay, not the greatest strategy there, Pops, and he passed away. Anyway, I want to make sure that people who are diabetic and people who have gone through chemo, that they're educated on what to look for, because I didn't know what I had was neuropathy. Even though I'd researched it, it was different than what I'd researched because she was diabetic. And I go, I got this burning in my leg, but I didn't understand it. And I got totally lucky on finding a neurologist that could actually fix it without doing all the other stuff. So I want everybody who's, again, diabetic and the possibility that they've had chemo in the past, any like hip surgery, knee replacement, those kind of things, anything traumatic to the body like that, the body may react with neuropathy. Inflammation is probably the number one cause of, I would say, well over 80% of diseases in the human body.
Yes.
So paying attention to the inflammation is absolutely huge. Granted, the disease I'm talking about strikes mostly people in their 50s or more.
I'm seeing it earlier. I'm seeing it earlier than that now. I'm seeing it much earlier.
And why do you think that is? I'm real curious what your opinion is.
Well, it's just what we're eating and what we're drinking.
Exactly. It's the wonderful nutrition our government is pushing in our throats.
Well, and
get my sarcasm chin out again.
And the food industry too, because they lobby to them. They lobby to them. What I was going to say. So I think that's awesome. You've pretty much told us who your ideal client is, and so I'll move on to the last question, because you've done well, mate. We're almost 50 minutes in. So.
Hey, you talk to somebody who's passionate about their ideas, and you expect them to not give a very long story. Shame on you. I'm kidding. More sarcasm, Chin.
It's out again. I was going to say, so I'll just move on to the last question. So tell us, what ideas or information, Jeff, would you give to provide lifelong longevity or create lifelong longevity?
The number one this is probably away from how most people might answer that question. And the number one is inform yourself.
Yes.
Research it. I thought of something funny in my own head, and I'm going to say it anyway. I don't understand how universities make any money, because everything you ever wanted to know is on the internet and it's free. The exceptions, doctor, lawyer, the things that you need a license to do, great. School for that, I'm all for that. That's fine. And God bless anybody who wants to be a policeman or a teacher. You couldn't pay me enough for those jobs. Side note. Okay, so informing yourself is the battle, because I informed myself basically out of default. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I didn't, even though I'd researched neuropathy, it didn't dawn on me that I had the same thing, because it was different, just a different category. So looking into it more is what helped me. The other thing is, it's okay to believe your doctor, but don't necessarily believe everything your doctor says. Or, you want a perfect example? Think about a doctor who just got out of school versus a doctor who's been a doctor for 40 years. Which one had the most recent training? Which one's more set in his ways? Which one is more likely to look into new trends of ways to treat people? I'm not trying to poop all over the physicians.
They're important questions. They're important questions. They're just questions. That's all they are.
Yeah, and exactly. Find out. Inform yourself as to what they're doing. Because here, I'll tell you one that goes along the same line. I actually worked for a short time after all this neuropathy stuff. I worked for a chiropractor who was helping people with neuropathy. I go, hey, I know that scene. That's how I got fixed. And I went there, and what he was doing was using electric pulses into the foot and in the feet and the hands to deaden the nerves so that they wouldn't feel them. That they were putting electric shock into it. And I asked the neurologist that did fix me, I said, is that a good idea? He said, well, it's kind of like the death throw of the nerve. So long as the cell is still alive, you've got a shot at rebuilding that. I mean, you think about it, your body does it all the time. If you cut your hand, your body rebuilds everything, so everything goes back. It's built that way. But when you shock it and you kill the cell, there's nothing to run that anymore. People walked out of there, oh yeah, I feel much better. That's because you can't feel the nerves anymore, and you've got 0% chance of getting better in that area. And I quit. I said, you got to be kidding me. What you're doing to these people is a crime. And he didn't like that very much, and I didn't care. I was bigger than him. That's probably part of it. But anyway.
All right. Thanks so much, Jeff. Much appreciated for the gold nuggets today. And I learned a little bit today as well. So thank you so much for that.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk and get the word out. And again, anybody who wants my book, all you got to do is say the word and I'll get it to you PDF.
And what was I going to say? So my VA, my virtual assistant, my associate, I call her, she'll give you the links to the platforms that I put it on. And you can put your details in there too. So if anyone has any questions to ask you, and that'd be much appreciated, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks very much, guys. So you've been watching Dr. Scott and Jeff on the Get Busy Living podcast. I hope you got some information today. And thanks very much, guys. Catch us later.
Thanks.